There is a quiet room where pain becomes art. The air hums with restraint, like a violin string stretched too tight, waiting to break. A shadow moves. A hand hesitates before touching another. Not with tenderness, but with the slow precision of someone who wants to feel control ripple through their fingertips. This is not the scream of the cruel, it is the silence of the wounded. The sadist does not hunt for blood, not at first. They hunt for power, and power, to them, is safety. Because once, long ago, they were powerless. Sadism is not born from joy and suffering. It is born from the terror of insignificance. In the language of the psyche, the sadist is the child who learned that to survive, they must never again be small. That if they cannot be loved, they will settle for being feared. Because fear, unlike love, cannot be taken away. Underneath the sadist's cruelty lies a paradox. They cause pain to escape their own. They control to avoid collapse. They dominate because, somewhere deep inside, they still remember what it was like to be dominated. And they vowed, never again. The sadist's smile is often the mask of the once humiliated child. Their calmness, a choreography designed to hide the panic of vulnerability. Their pleasure, not in the scream itself, but in the proof that they finally matter. Deep exploration, the anatomy of power and pain. To understand the sadist, you must imagine a world without softness. A home where warmth was replaced by watchfulness. Where love came in conditional doses. Affection for obedience, silence for safety. In such places, tenderness feels like exposure. Kindness becomes dangerous, and so the heart builds armor. But armor hardens everything it touches. Soon, even compassion becomes a threat, because to feel it would mean remembering the ache beneath the steel. This is how the sadist is born, not from darkness, but from the unbearable light that was once denied. When they hurt another, they are not simply inflicting pain. They are staging a ritual of reversal. They become what once terrified them. They become the god of their own suffering. Every act of domination is an echo. See? I'm not the one trembling anymore. But control is a fragile throne, because the moment they stop performing power, the old helplessness returns, waiting, patient, in the shadows of their own mind. So they must repeat it, again and again, until cruelty becomes the only language they can still speak fluently. To the sadist, intimacy is not closeness, it is collision. They cannot rest inside connection, they must test it. They press until something breaks, just to confirm that the bond is real. They mistake tension for aliveness, and chaos for proof. The tenderness they crave terrifies them, because it threatens to dissolve the boundaries that keep their wounds contained. Love, to them, is a dangerous mirror. It reflects the very softness they learn to despise. And yet, they long for it in secret. They crave the one thing they cannot bear to receive. So they hurt what they desire. They bruise what they fear losing. They punish the vulnerability that reminds them of their own. In their private mythology, pain becomes the only way to touch another without being touched in return. Imagine walking through a mansion where every mirror shows a distorted reflection. The sadist lives here. Each act of cruelty is another mirror. Each victim a reflection of their younger self. The one who was powerless, voiceless, unseen. But when they strike, they are not punishing the other. They are punishing that reflection. They are saying to the ghost of their own childhood, "Look what you made me become." And somewhere, deep in that echoing hall, a small voice still whispers, "Please stop." But the sadist cannot hear it anymore. The voice has been buried under years of performance and pride, because to hear it would mean to feel again. And feeling, for them, is the same as drowning. Many sadists do not appear monstrous. They can be articulate, magnetic, even charming. They study emotion like a language they were never taught, mimicking tone and timing without ever truly understanding its grammar. They know how to make others feel small, not because they are inherently cruel, but because they learned early that shrinking others is the fastest way to feel tall. Beneath the mask, however, there is a void, a numbness mistaken for calm. Their pleasure is not joy, it's relief. Relief that, for a moment, they are not the one trembling. And when the act is over, when the control fades, they often feel emptier than before. Because domination does not heal humiliation, it only mirrors it. Maybe not as the one who harms, but as the one who was taught that power was the only way to matter. Maybe you, too, built walls around the softest parts of yourself and called it strength. Maybe you've mistaken control for safety or silence for peace. We all carry traces of the sadist within us, that instinct to hurt before we're hurt, to withdraw before we're rejected, to dominate when we feel small. It's the nervous system's last defense against annihilation. And yet, if you look closely, that instinct is not evil. It's terrified. It's the child who watched love turn violent, who saw softness punished, who learned that to survive meant to numb the heart and sharpen the hands. It's the part of you that wanted to be seen, but was only noticed when you misbehaved. So now it creates pain just to feel real. But pain was never proof of life, only of loneliness. One day, the sadist meets someone who does not flinch, who does not fight back, but also does not collapse. Their stillness becomes unbearable. Because in that stillness, the sadist sees themselves reflected, not as powerful, but as afraid. Not as the monster, but as the memory. And for a brief second, the armor cracks. The pain returns. The child beneath the cruelty reaches for air. If they are lucky, this moment becomes the beginning of change. But more often, it terrifies them back into control. Because transformation feels like death when your identity was built on survival. Still, even fear cannot erase that glimpse of truth. The mirror, once seen, cannot be unseen. Healing for the sadist does not begin with guilt. It begins with grief. Grief for what was lost when they became what they feared. Grief for the innocence they buried to protect themselves. To heal is to walk backward through the house of mirrors. To meet each reflection with compassion instead of contempt. To look at the faces of those they've hurt and finally see the face of their own pain staring back. It is a long, humbling return. One that demands they surrender the illusion of control for the truth of connection. But connection is not a battlefield. It is the quiet act of staying present when every instinct screams to run. It is learning that power does not come from inflicting pain, but from enduring emotion without turning it into violence. To feel deeply without needing to dominate, that is the sadist's real victory. Every sadist, beneath the rage and ritual, longs for the same thing: to be held without being overpowered, to be seen without being judged, to be safe enough to put the armor down. But they don't know how. Their nervous system confuses care with control and love with danger. So even when tenderness arrives, they brace for the strike that never comes. They will test it, sabotage it, twist it until it feels familiar again. Because to them, familiarity is safer than joy. But one day, if they dare to stay long enough, The unfamiliar silence of kindness will begin to soften them. It will terrify them, then calm them, then finally break them open. And in that breaking, if they can bear it, something resembling innocence might return. I have seen the sadist weep, though never in public. They cry as though confessing to a crime they do not understand. They speak of emptiness as if it were an organ inside them, pulsing, aching, alive. They do not want to be cruel. They simply do not know who they are without control. When they finally stop performing power, they collapse, not out of defeat, but out of recognition. They realize that what they've been chasing all along was not submission, but sincerity. Not dominance, but dignity. Not victory, but visibility. Because the saddest truth of all is that the sadist does not enjoy the pain of others. They envy their ability to feel. What redeems the sadist is not punishment, but permission. The permission to feel without being destroyed by it. When they learn that emotion can be endured, that softness does not mean surrender, a new kind of power begins to emerge. It's quiet, almost invisible. It doesn't demand. It doesn't destroy. It simply exists, steady, rooted, alive. This is the birth of true power, the ability to remain open in the presence of one's own pain. And when that happens, the sadist's story begins to dissolve. They no longer need to hurt to prove their existence. They no longer need to dominate to feel alive. They begin to see that control was never safety. It was just the absence of trust. And trust, though fragile, can be rebuilt, not through force, but through patience. Through learning, slowly, that to love is not to win. It is to witness. In the end, the sadist's cruelty is not proof of their power. It is evidence of their pain. And the only thing stronger than the will to dominate is the courage to feel.